on, Sharran. Really appreciate it. I think what's really important for a lot of executives and founders is to understand what that first role really entails. And I remember when we spoke years back, you told me your first hire was an executive assistant. So we'd love to understand, why was it an executive assistant, and then how did you go about thinking about hiring an executive assistant as your first hire?
Yeah, so what people don't understand for most founders is, right, a tightly wound entrepreneur cannot transform. And we have this belief that as founders, as entrepreneurs, we have to do everything ourselves. The sad part is no one really cares how much you and I do. They only care what the result is, right? And so it looks like there's a much bigger piece, and the power of an EA or an executive assistant, I think, has four kind of big pieces to it. So let's actually explore them. The first piece is kind of why. So why do you actually want one or should consider one? The second piece is, like, what should you actually look for in this process? And I think this is what trips up a lot of people. They don't exactly know the right next step. So they're like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. The third is, how do you actually go about finding a person like this, both the right person and the right economics that can help you with your business? And most importantly, let's assume all of that happens. This is what scares people, is how do you actually utilize this person on a day-to-day basis? So let's actually break down each part of this, and then I'd love your comments on this. So the first one is the why. So how I think about a lot of this is there's two parts to how a person runs their life. The first one is what I call their zone of genius, and the second one is the zone of resentment. The zone of genius is where you and I totally thrive, where what we do is fascinating and motivating to each of us. Mm-hmm. And so no matter how long, you and I can do the same job that's in our zone of genius for 8 hours, and it didn't feel like the time went by at all. What happens is most entrepreneurs end up only, as they start the business, spending a lot of their time in their zone of genius. And as the business starts to grow, they spend less and less time in their zone of genius. They spend more and more time in this, what we call the zone of resentment. The zone of resentment is the thing that you do that you know you should not be doing, right? And as soon as we get to this point, we realize that it's time for us to do something great. So for a lot of times, how I think about this is, not everyone is ready for an executive assistant, but when they end up doing more things in their zone of resentment, that means they need to get back into their zone of genius, right? And that if you go home and you're feeling tired, if you go home and you feel like you have too much on your plate, if you're like, man, I can never catch up, that is when it's time to kind of think about it. Between the zone of genius and zone of resentment, is there anything else that comes to mind for you?
No, I mean, like you said, when you start, I feel like founders and execs are doing, so many different exciting things. And then once you grow and scale, you're starting to catch yourself doing like the tedious things, really heavy administrative things, operational types of tasks. And what I see like a lot of founders is they're either like a really good, executor or implementer. And like for me, my zone of genius is like, I love conversating with people, but what I don't like doing is being behind the screen, writing emails, managing my calendar, my CRM. Like there's so many different things that are like repeatable, time-consuming things that like I spend so many hours, or I spent so many hours a day doing them, that I'm like, I don't have time to get on sales calls.
Yeah.
I can't figure out why.
Yeah. So that brings me to the next point, which is very interesting. Most people, if I could give any piece of advice to founders and entrepreneurs, CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs should only be doing these three things, which are vision, people, and cash. And what this does is, vision allows you to say, hey, I know I see something that is amazing, and I want to go get that thing. But we know we can't do it all by ourselves. We can start by doing it ourselves. So we start by me. We start by me in this process. And then we're like, hey, who else is going to get us the growth? The third is, well, hey, I have to be responsible in this process. So what is the cash associated with this? A lot of times people wait to say, hey, I want to get a $150,000 EA that is absolutely amazing before I do anything. But you don't realize that there is an amazing EA waiting for you right there. So kind of when people ask me what is important, here's what I always tell them. The first one is, we need to find people that are wired to do that job. The reason is, they're not wired to be founders. They're not wired to be entrepreneurs. And most founders and entrepreneurs think that, man, if I bring this person in, then they become the founder. They're going to see how much money I make. They're going to want my job. They don't. They want what they want. So the most important thing for me is, hiring the EA that has the right personality to be an EA. There are people, like you and I wake up to grow a business.
Yeah.
There are people that wake up and they get their most joy. Their zone of genius is doing our zone of resentment. And that's what we truly want. So when I think about what, I really think about okay, who's that person, as they have the right personality. The second is, I want to find a way to make sure that person can talk to me the way I want to be talked to, right? So
Yep.
for me, I like talking and not typing. So
Yep.
when someone if I talk to an EA that wants, SOPs page after page, that is not my kind of EA. But if I can do a quick video or a Loom video or just have a quick voice memo, that's my kind of EA. So I always tell people, hey, if I gave you a 2-minute thing, how would you react to it? I know you work with this a lot. So how do you, tell me about your feelings around personality types and how they communicate and why that's important.
Like you said, so I utilize an app called Voxer,
Yeah.
right? The walkie-talkie app, because I don't like typing things. I think that's, again, time consuming. I'd rather just be like, hey, I need this, or can you remind me on this? And I just Voxer it, and then they get it. They go, cool, got it. I'll remind you by 5, and it's just done. And they're accountable for keeping me accountable. And that's what I truly when I was looking for an executive assistant. What I really needed was an accountability manager.
Yeah.
Because I have so much on my plate, and my communication style is quick Voxer, not quick type. Because whether I'm in the office or on the go or doing something else, there's emails and everything popping up. And what I really prefer is I want somebody to be when I interview for this position or when I'm looking for this position, I like to make that clear. Hey, I'm a voice memo or I'm a Voxer guy. Is that okay? And sometimes people will say, can you email me or can you Slack me? And if they say that, I'm well, I don't always want to have to Slack something over. But not everybody's.
But some people like that.
Yeah, people like to just say, hey, let's get on Slack, let's get on WhatsApp, and I'll just communicate back and forth with what I need. And people don't like voice memo. So it's really communication style is really important. It's are you the person that's really quick and you want to voice memo or Voxer or and do that style, or or the iMessage Siri type of thing, or are you a founder where you're I just want to type out and just make sure, hey, this is my daily, weekly, monthly priorities.
Right.
And I think that's really important to assess what type of person are you, because I feel you're probably always on the go and you're hey, I need you to remind me on this.
Right.
Rather than you're not probably on the plane and car typing things out.
Exactly. But I think what you said is really important. There is a person out there for any personality.
Absolutely.
You just have to find that. And if you're unclear about how you like to communicate, you're putting that person at an insane disadvantage, because now they're walking into a world and there's a significant mismatch, right? So we talked about kind of why this is important, get you out of your zone of resentment, get you into your zone of genius. Number 2, we know what is important. Founders should focus on vision, people, and cash, and everything else, they should ask this question: who else can do this? Any idea that we have, we should ask who else can do this. I have one of my mentors, we'll talk about an idea, and he says, this is a great idea, we brainstorm it, and he goes, great, who's gonna do it, right? And it's amazing when we as founders take responsibility to do things that we are even not supposed to do. And if you're not quite there yet, that's okay, but you'd be amazed how much capacity an EA can create for you. Let's talk about the how. The how, this is a really important part of the puzzle for me, which is, there's nothing more than this picture that helps me with it, is this is not you. This is you. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Our job is, if we're already tightly wound, the last thing we want to do is go find a person that is actually going to work with us. That the entire idea is we're too slammed to go do that. But if we can't get a very clear vision of exactly what we want, that's all we need. So if you're looking for an EA right now, I would get on with the assistant lead team and I would just talk to them. I'd say, hey, here's who I am, here's my zone of genius, here's my zone of resentment. Here are the things that I want to do, here's the things that is dragging me down. And based on that, I'd like a person like this. And you just tell them that. And then the assistant lead team creates the job description, creates the strategy. Now they get to know who they're going to go look for. When they come back, they find the perfect candidate, and you don't have to do that, they do that, right?
Yep.
I think a lot of people get stuck here. They think that we have to do all of this. Instead, I would say you just have to get really clear on what you want. Now, this is a hard part for people, but here's the best part I would suggest. You should trust in the team so much that you shouldn't settle. Tell the team, hey, I'm not going to hire someone until I feel perfectly good about him. And that's good. Your team wants that, right?
Definitely.
But the last part about the utilization, I'll tell you how I utilize the folks is, I think about 3 domains in my life. And these 3 domains are really, really important. And the first one is growth. What can I do to have somebody help me with growth. And this can just be taking stuff off my plate. So if most people, what they need for growth is they need time. If I just get a little bit more time, but people don't realize that time is also tied to joy.
Yeah.
Right? I could get an extra hour, but if my other 7 hours of the day I spent in my zone of resentment, this is not a happy place for me.
Yeah, it's a
to be,
pissed
right?
hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second is ops. We all have operations. We are selling something. We're promising a vision, but we have to deliver in some way. Ops are always mappable or systemizable, if you will, right? And so someone to actually help me collect payments, reconcile spreadsheets, and do those things that I can make better decisions, ops are really good. But the third is the thing that a lot of people forget, and I call this life admin. There are things that I have to do and you have to do, which is schedule doctor's appointments. You have some random recurring thing that is happening on your credit card. It's a $75 charge that's happening over and over and over. And you're like, man, I have no time to call to do that. This is as simple as hit forward and say, hey, can you please help me cancel this? Now you know that project you don't have time to do because you're growing. And so I think what a lot of people do is because they don't get to a lot of life admin, they get super sad. And that's really hard. And I think that's where there's insane power in having an EA come into place, because you can say, what can I do for growth? What can I do for ops? And what can I do for life admin? A lot of times what I do, Leif, is I say, hey, let's start in one area. Hey, just help me with growth to start. Cool. You got that going? Awesome. Let's help me with ops next. Awesome. Hey, now let's start helping me with life admin. Then you'll realize this person is so valuable to you that all you're going to think about is, who can do this, who can do this, and who can do this. So whenever you think about actually getting an executive assistant, I think it is not just a strategic hire, but it's the deep respect that you can give yourself for the growth that's about to come for you.
No, I mean, everything you said was on point. And I think the mistake that people make is when they hire somebody, they expect right away growth, ops, life admin. Yeah. And they want it all in one, and they want it right away because they go, I hired this person, I need this person to do all three right away because that's why I hired this person. But obviously there's a little bit of ramp up to it where, like, you know, whether growth in, like you said, time, if I had more time to be more creative and just handle different initiatives in the business, I'm like, cool, I got more time to do things that I like to do. Like in operations, that's typically where people lack, whether it's like communication or there's like different systems lacking, or there's bookkeeping or financials or any of that kind of stuff. And then there's a life admin part, which I actually think is the most important part because that is really your personal and your professional. And in fact, that's taking away time from your family. Whether it's like, you'd be surprised of, like, even me, I had to call Delta. Right, then had to go call the water company, and then like you're on customer support for like it was like an hour, and I was like, man, I just wasted an hour. Where I can have somebody just say, hey, like you said, forward, can you handle this? Can you take care of this? Can you look into this for me? And then they come back, go, hey, troubleshot. Like, can you imagine? Like you said, hey, can you call Delta for me and get this credit back? And then they go, hey, done. And you're like, wow, I just saved myself an hour.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you two kind of quick tips that people don't realize the power of this on, right? That you and I really enjoy. Tip number, I'll call this the tips that are amazing for us. The tip number one is we think that the person that you work with needs to have all the answers. And what you need to realize is that they don't.
Yeah.
So what I look for is just options. I say, hey, I'm looking to go from Orange County to Bora Bora. Can you just give me some options? So then the EA goes in and says, hey, Sharran, here you have 3 options for flights. Here's Monday, here's Tuesday, here's Wednesday. And I'm like, and here, this is $1,000, this is $2,000, and this is $1,500. Which one would you like? And then I say, hey, I'd like this one. And then she goes and does it. What people think is that they think that this part of the process is going to be taken away. Yeah. It doesn't have to. Yeah. The most important thing that we need is somebody else to do the work to give us the option so that we can make decisions. This is one of the easiest ways to utilize an EA, is to let them do the work to give you options so you can just make decisions, right? That's number one. The second is, not everyone is pre-trained in everything. And so you and I talk about this often, which is if we want somebody to learn how to do social media posting or how to write on LinkedIn or how to do engagement, you can do one of two things. Training is available, and the training comes in 2 parts. Like my EA right now says, hey, I'll go find this in a YouTube video. So you can just say, hey, listen, go find the YouTube video that's associated with this, watch it, and then come back and tell me what you learned. Or, hey, let me pay $100 for you to take a Udemy course or something like that associated with this. So that way you know that I paid $100 for a course. Now your EA is like, wow, Late invested in me. They get better skills, and they are a much better trained professional. And it's no different than how we would train ourselves.
Yeah.
We should train our EAs as well. So I'm a big fan of, one, having somebody get me a lot of options so I can make a decision. And two, if they don't have the skill, have them go find it, or I'll pay to train them because now I have a significantly better person on the team.
Well, it looks like everybody should be hiring an EA after this one. So, Sharran, I appreciate your time, man. Thanks for explaining it in such an easy to understand manner. And I think sometimes people think this process is so complex. It's actually a lot simpler when you just take it step by step, and especially like when you have a company like Assistantly really support you and handhold you through the process. So
yeah. So my only gift to all of you would be, your job is just a little piece of the job. Just get clear on what you want and talk to the team and let them do all the work for you.
Love it. Awesome. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.